I've been tagged again, this time by Andy at Doberman Knives. I'll put a link to Andy's channel in the description box. I do recommend you check him out. He's an extremely talented craftsman, makes catapults and pimps knives and makes knives, and some really interesting stuff he's producing. So go and check out Doberman Knives. The tag is to show your favourite home defence items and do a support and shout out for George at GI Custom Knives. Now, I have already done a video, a support video for George's 1 year anniversary giveaway competition, so I'd suggest you check that out if you want to find out more. But at least please go and have a look at George's channel, GI Custom. Extremely good knife maker, top bloke, and can't recommend him highly enough. So to the main part of the tag, which is home defence items. Now, this video may be a little bit different from some of the others that come with this tag, because I don't have a massive personal armoury to show you around. Andy did leave a comment saying that he suspects I have a few skirmish ready knives hidden around the place, but to be honest, I'm of the opinion that unless you've had training and practice in the use of knives for self-defence, then you shouldn't bother, because you're probably going to be more of a danger to yourself than anybody else. And I do understand that might be heresy for some people watching this video, but I also suspect that others, maybe people like Brother Marshall or Del from Dirty Room Knives, would probably agree with that sentiment. So on to the video, which isn't simply going to look at home defence items. It's going to be a walkthrough of my plan, my strategy, my sort of thinking on the subject of home defence, and there'll be a couple of bits of kit along the way. Okay, so the first thing to mention is here behind the front door we have a panic button. Now, the thing with this is it's connected to the house alarm. It's very loud, so I'm not going to set it off now, partly because it is very loud, but partly because I forgot to dig out the little key that you need to turn it off. But the way the house is laid out, from the front window you can see who's at the front door, and from some recent incidents in the local press, the intruders haven't smashed their way in, they've knocked at the door, and then when the door's open they've forced their way in. So if you can see who's at the door and set off the panic alarm, the blue light goes, the alarm goes, and it's right above the front door on the outside wall, and it's pretty loud. Then if you can get the scroats to change their mind and run off without even opening your door, then that's probably the best outcome that you're going to want. Okay, so a more likely scenario perhaps is for intruders to try and enter the rear of the property, and in our house the main bedroom is the back bedroom, and on the bedside table, the nightstand, there is always the Phoenix TK21 465 lumens. Extremely useful. It will light up our backyard, next door's backyard, the alleyway and the houses opposite, and if you can see what's going on before anybody enters the property, then you can phone the Rozzers and they can deal with it for you. So a good strong flashlight, simply to see what's going on your property before the doors are breached. Now, if the intruders do gain entry, then I think there's two basic scenarios The first one is where you have time to get yourself in position with some equipment before the intruders are fully in the property. So what I'm thinking is they may be coming in through an external door or through an internal door or up a narrow hallway, but basically they're constrained in that they're coming one by one from the same direction and you're already in position. In that scenario, a good flashlight and a small knocking stick is very much a classic combination. You could refer to this as a baton. That's the English word for baton. And with these two, you're obviously going to get a very good tactical advantage from the sheer brightness of the light. The knocking stick, the baton, is quite light, but it's very hard. It's not long, so you are going to be in close. However, as well as cracking a skull, if you can aim your blow and get the collarbone, then the associated arm is completely out of action, because this will quite easily smash a collarbone. Bosh, bang, they're down. And because, as I say, you're in position early, if they're coming through the doorway or up a hall, one by one, you don't have to deal with everything at once. And obviously, once the first one goes down, the second one thinks twice. The second one goes down, the third one's worried. If you can hold your nerve, this classic combination of flashlight and baton should see you through. Now, the next scenario is where you're not in position in time, the intruders are fully in the property, and as you enter the scene, you're basically walking into a 360-degree threat, because they will be dispersed, they won't be lining up to meet you one by one. And I'll show you in a second what I will choose for that scenario. Okay, so scenario 2 is where the intruders have gained entry and they're dispersed in the main downstairs area before you can get in position. So as I say, you're walking into a 360-degree threat, which is basically what you're facing is a full-on melee. In that scenario, these two are not going to do you very much good unless you've got some serious skills to back them up. Without those serious skills, you need different kit. And the kit you need, I think, needs to do 3 jobs. It needs to be intimidating in appearance, because any psychological advantage you can gain will do you a power of good. It needs to keep the action at arm's length for as long as possible, and the reason for that is the 4th function: it needs to be either as heavy as possible or as sharp as possible, or a combination of the two. Because if you think about it, if you're outnumbered, every strike you get in, you're possibly facing 3 or 4 coming back at you. So hence you need to keep the action at arm's length as long as possible. Something like this would do the job for me. This is a traditional stub-eye mountain walking axe. It's not a climbing ice axe. It's too long, it's too heavy. It's primarily a walking axe. And it is heavy. Good hickory handle, a lanyard. So if you're coming down the stairs as they're coming up, that they probably won't get a good view of end on, but they will feel it. As I say, with the lanyard you do get a good amount of reach. The blade part, it's not sharp, but with the weight, if you strike a weapon hand, that'll break fingers. If you strike an arm full force, that'll break an arm, no problem. Probably even side on if you get a good swing. The point, as you can see, the pick is about 8mm thick. The bit of serrations there, bit of a swedge, it tapers down, so it is quite pointy. It's not sharp, but with the weight of this, and I'm guessing this weighs 7 or 8 pounds at least, and the leverage, if you swing that, if you hit somebody's rib cage or the neck or the skull, that's going to go in. It's probably going to go in quite far, at which point you'll have crossed a line, because you'll then be faced with a very real prospect of having inflicted a fatal injury. And in the next part of the video, this is something I want to talk about briefly. But I think there's a lot you can do with something like this. Okay, so I just want to discuss a little further that last comment about crossing a line and potentially inflicting a fatal injury, because the idea of home defence, protecting your family, protecting your property, isn't just about waving machetes at people. There are quite serious implications. There's a debate in the UK that keeps bubbling up in between political scandals and economic crises about whether the relevant legislation is fair to homeowners who find that they have to physically defend themselves and their property against intruders. Some people think that the laws need completely rewriting. Some people think the laws as they stand are fine, but the judicial guidance needs clarifying. Some people think the laws are too lenient as they stand, and in practice you can get a range of outcomes from an individual a few years ago who shot a teenage intruder with a shotgun as he was running away. He was in the property, but he shot him from behind and he got jailed. But then much more recently there was a fella whose property was broken into in the late evening by 4 masked armed men, and in the ensuing scuffle he fatally stabbed one. No charges against him. It was decided that he didn't react with undue force. And that's one thing that I've got left to discuss that would, I think, give me an advantage in that sort of situation. It's not a piece of equipment, it's a decision, it's a moral position that I've taken, and that is if somebody were to break into the house, put myself and my family in physical danger, then as far as I'm concerned, at the moment they choose to take that decision, I no longer consider them to have any rights as human beings, and indeed I don't really consider them to be worthwhile as human beings. They've simply become a threat to be eliminated, in the same way that if a rabid dog strayed into a village, nobody would consider it as the faithful, friendly household pet that it used to be. It's just a danger that needs to be dealt with. And the advantage this gives me, I believe, is that with a black and white decision like that, it removes indecision from my thinking, and it would remove hesitation from my actions, both of which are going to be helpful in an extreme situation such as what we're discussing. So therefore, with this very clear idea that if an intruder or multiple intruders were to break into the house, there would be no quarter given. And from a practical point of view, I don't think you can really, because it may be true that the intruders bottle it and run, but you can't assume that until it actually happens. You have to assume that they're not going to, and you have to assume that should it get physical, you will be fighting for your life, particularly if you're outnumbered and they're armed and they're intent on doing harm. So basically, what the scroats and the toe rags of the world need to understand is that should you choose to break into my property and threaten myself and my family, I will sleep just as easily with your blood on my hands as I would without.